Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
In our top story, United States President Donald Trump is working towards making the Middle East a unified family. This comes after the White House announced that Sudan would be the third Muslim country to create ties with a Jewish state in just 6 weeks. Trump has expended time, energy, and diplomatic currency in hopes of bringing peace to the region. He said he believes at least 4 other states are in the process of establishing relations with Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the announcement, saying, "We are looking forward to a warm peace with Sudan." Jerusalem announced that it would be sending $5 million worth of wheat to Khartoum immediately as a gesture of friendship. Sudan's leader, General Abdel Fattah Burhan, said his country is the biggest winner of the normalization deal. His comments came in response to false claims by Iran that Sudan was blackmailed into making peace with Israel.
The Israeli Defense Forces exposed a terror tunnel which penetrated into Israeli territory. Hamas reportedly spent millions of dollars digging and reinforcing the subterranean passage, which stretched from Khan Yunis in Gaza into Israel near Kibbutz Kitzufim. IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi said the cross-border attack tunnel was a highly significant asset to the terror groups in the Gaza Strip, and its discovery dealt a major blow to the enemy. Israel has installed underground sensors to detect subterranean activity, namely digging along the Gaza border. This is the first tunnel detected by the new system, but is the 20th terror tunnel destroyed by the IDF since 2014.
The Israeli Knesset has voted to gradually open schools and selected parts of the economy after nearly 5 weeks of total lockdown. The percentage of positive coronavirus cases has dropped to the lowest level since June, and the number of serious cases have also drastically decreased. The Knesset agreed to allow grades 1 through 4 to go back to school in capsules and on a rotating schedule. This announcement was made 1 week after daycare centers and preschools became operational. The government hopes that opening educational facilities to grades 1 through 4 will permit the parents of young children to return to work so that the country can begin to restart the economy.
The White House is set to designate several so-called human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Oxfam, as anti-Semitic. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is calling to end American support for groups who operate an anti-Israel agenda and who support the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement against the Jewish state. Jerusalem has warned both groups about their affiliation with the BDS movement, which attempts to delegitimize Israel's existence.
United States Ambassador to Israel David Friedman was at Ariel University in Samaria for the signing of a pact extending America's scientific cooperation to include Judea, Samaria, and the Golan Heights. The ratification removes territorial restrictions on any agreements between the U.S. and Israel. Speaking at a recent policy conference in Jerusalem, Friedman said the position of the United States is that Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria will never be evacuated. He added that the Trump administration believes the extension of Israeli sovereignty over these areas would serve America and Israel's best interest. Friedman went on to say that if reelected, President Trump plans to put all efforts into making Israel safe, secure, and prosperous, and to continue to encourage more countries to normalize ties with Israel.
The Israeli Defense Forces launched its largest annual drill, dubbed Operation Deadly Arrow. This exercise simulated a large-scale conflict with Hezbollah, which involved physical maneuvers of ground forces, naval vessels, and aircraft. The drill focused mainly on the cooperation and communication between IDF headquarters and command centers during wartime. The Iranian-backed Shiite militia, which controls Lebanon and is constantly encroaching on Israel's northern border, is viewed as one of the Jewish state's greatest threats. Hezbollah has been building a massive arsenal, which includes more than 130,000 rockets.
Israel's National Holocaust Memorial recently held a virtual ceremony honoring the righteous among the nations. This special distinction is given to those who helped save Jews from the Nazi genocide perpetrated during the Second World War. Yad Vashem maintains a database of the righteous among the nations with their stories and pictures. A few weeks ago, Yad Vashem posthumously honored Stefania and Jan Buchela for saving a young Jewish child and raising him as their own. They also named Sister Sofia Suchigielska, a Catholic nun who helped save several Jewish children. Their names will be commemorated on the Mount of Remembrance in Jerusalem, and their stories added to the online database.
Nearly half of Americans do not know the meaning of anti-Semitism. Two recent surveys conducted by the American Jewish Committee reflect that a large number of Americans either have not heard the term anti-Semitism or do not know what it means. Half of those surveyed have witnessed anti-Jewish bigotry at least once over the last 5 years, but did not know the term anti-Semitism. This comes at a time of rising anti-Semitism in America and throughout the world. 88% of Jews polled say that they believe that anti-Semitism remains a problem in the United States, and 82% of Jews surveyed believe that anti-Semitism has increased in the U.S. over the past 5 years.
Israeli archaeologists have discovered an ancient border marker in the Golan Heights. The artifact was uncovered during excavations at the Nafach Army Base in northern Israel. Many cities and towns in Israel have retained their original and often biblical names, and the discovery of this 1,700-year-old marker inscribed with the name Kfar Nafach proves that the Nafach military base is definitely the location of the ancient city of the same name. Archaeologists involved in the project explain that under the reign of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, these stones were placed as the boundaries of villages for the purpose of collecting taxes. This is the first boundary stone found in the center of the Golan Heights, which is inscribed with the name of the place that has been preserved to this day.
Hadassah Medical Center is in talks to open a hospital in Dubai. The Abraham Accords, which called for the normalization of diplomatic ties between Jerusalem, Dubai, and Manama, have already begun to yield the fruit of cooperation in the fields of technology, investment, and medicine. Hadassah Hospital is a world-renowned medical institution with 2 massive facilities in the Israeli capital. The head of the Jerusalem Medical Center, Ziv Rothstein, was in the UAE recently negotiating a deal to build a Hadassah hospital in Dubai. This would create an even bigger opportunity for cooperation in the fields of medicine and research between the two countries, and there are talks of Israeli doctors and entire research departments relocating to the Emirati capital. Rothstein told the Israeli media that the proposal to establish Hadassah Hospital as a medical power in the United Arab Emirates is a revolution.
We are living in mysterious yet miraculous times. We've witnessed the most remarkable fulfillment of biblical prophecy, the Jewish people's return to Israel, and the prosperity and contributions of this tiny country in such a short time. Yet we've also seen an unexpected rise in anti-Semitism, which takes the form of anti-Zionism and alliances between groups that are fighting against the most fundamental biblical values. In the book Titus, Trump, and the Triumph of Israel, Josh Reinstein answers important questions to clarify what has driven political action from the time that the Roman Emperor Titus destroyed Jerusalem until today, when President Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Get your copy today and learn how faith-based diplomacy has changed the world. To order your advance copy, go to triumphofisrael.com.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Yehuda Glick. He is former member of Knesset and the chairman of the Shalom Yerushalayim Foundation. Yehuda, thanks for being on the show.
Shalom, it's my pleasure to be here in Jerusalem and speaking to you and speaking to the world. You know, we're in days that we're locked up. We want to break through. We want to break through of all limitations and talk to the world.
Well, it's great to see you. You're right. This is the days where we're more confined because of the coronavirus. But it's really exciting the work that you're doing. Tell us a little about what is the Shalom Yerushalayim Foundation?
Shalom Jerusalem Foundation believes that Jerusalem is the center of believers in the world. It's the center of peace. It's the center of prayer. It's the center of God in the world. It's God's throne in the world. And we have an obligation. I mean, when God chooses upon Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he says to them, I have one goal for you, that you should serve as a source of blessing for all nations. And the place God chooses for that to happen is Jerusalem. And what we have been doing in the past few years, and especially in the past year, is trying to get the world, the awareness of Jerusalem as the world's center, as the foundation of faith in the world, and to get the world united around Jerusalem. And that's what we're doing in Shalom Jerusalem Foundation.
You're a spiritual leader, well known around the world, but you're also a member of Knesset, so you don't shy away from politics. Tell us a little about why was it so important for you to focus on working with Bible-believing Christians around the world with the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation?
A lot of it has to do with the Christians caucus in the Knesset, but it was I've said ever since I was the director of the Temple Institute, I became much more aware of the drive of so many people around the world, Bible believers, where from my eyes, it made a switch in my mind, understanding that Zionism, the return of the Jewish people back home, is not just a national phenomena. It's a global phenomenon. It's a message that we have to the world. We have to be a light upon the nations. And to do that, we have to cooperate with so many millions of people. And in my eyes, this is a godly phenomenon that we see in the past decades. We see so many non-Jewish believers who are part of becoming blessed by the return of the Jewish people back home. And the teaching of Torah from Jerusalem and connecting them to the Temple Mount as the place that God chooses, as Zion, the place that God chooses. And God says, I'm choosing Zion to be the center of all faith in the world. And this gives me so much inspiration when I meet these people that are non-Jewish, but understanding the Word of God from the Bible.
In the next couple days, the United States of America is going to a presidential election. Support for Donald Trump in Israel is sky high, according to all the polls. Why do you think Israelis support Donald Trump so much in these upcoming elections?
We have to understand that ever since the establishment of the State of Israel, the United States of America has been Israel's greatest ally. No matter what administration, the United States of America has been Israel's greatest ally. But I think what we've seen here in the past few years is something way beyond any of our expectations. If Donald Trump would have done only one of those things that we have expected, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, or just even recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Israel, I would say fighting, delegitimization of Israel, fighting antisemitism, talking about an option of establishment Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, recognition of Israeli sovereignty in Golan Heights. I can go on and on. Or outlawing the UNRWA, which was so-called an objective organization helping refugees, but was actually busy with incitement against Israel. So when he did this, I mean, I think that I can understand that the Israelis want more of that, and our appetite is greater and greater. And the many things that he began, and just the peace with the Arab world, which is a historical change that we've seen, is something that he's been leading. And I think that many people in Israel would like to see that going on and continue.
We had a conversation a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the Abrahamic Accords, and you were extremely excited about it. Why is it so momentous, these Abrahamic Accords that were pushed forward by Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Donald Trump?
As I said before, Israel was established to live in peace with its neighborhood. But the fact that the agreement was called Abraham's Accord already turns it not to a political agreement. It's a religious event. This is something with understanding a biblical perspective of what's going on. And when Israel, which was ever since it was established, was in war with all of our Arab neighbors, is seeing where the Arab world is coming to recognize, to benefit from cooperating with Israel and becoming blessed by the cooperation with Israel. We see the words of the prophet. People don't recall. People think it's obvious. We get used to some good things. The fact that the Bible was written thousands and thousands of years ago, and it's today, up to date, it's current, and we're living Bible. I think that's something that any Bible believer is just, in my eyes, is more than excited, is inspired. It's Bible alive.
You know, a lot of political pundits are saying the Abrahamic Accords happened because they stopped sovereignty, but there are some who are saying, no, you can have both. What is your opinion about that?
I'm not a spokesman of God. We were on the road towards sovereignty, and we were hoping for that to happen. God turned the direction to a different side. It's wonderful. I believe eventually anybody who has his eyes on what's going on in the situation knows eventually there will be sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, Israeli sovereignty. There's no other real option existing. So peace with the Arab world is definitely a breakthrough, and a tremendous breakthrough, and therefore it's like asking a mother which of her children she prefers. I'm very happy with this. I'll be very happy with this. It's going to happen. So right now, this is what came first. We're for it, and the fact in my eyes is again is also when they transferred the embassy to Jerusalem, the fact what aggravated the press in Israel or the left press in the world was, how could it be that it's not a religious event, it's a political event? Yes, a rabbi and a pastor blessed God at the event. This is a faithful, a biblical event occurring in front of our eyes.
You're very big on religious freedoms of the Temple Mount. You talk about the fulfillment of prophecy. A lot of people believe that the temple needs to be rebuilt before the Mashiach will come, that's the next part of prophecy. Where do you see this all playing out?
Again, I'm not, as I said, I'm not a spokesman for God. I know that we have an obligation to build a house of prayer for God, a house of prayer for all nations. And it's not my idea, it's Isaiah's idea, it's the prophet's idea, it's Micha's idea. It's the whole concept of Zechariah, of the people of Israel returning back home and bringing a source of life to the world. Now, I believe that the temple is not just another piece of real estate. Not give me another $1 million and we'll build the temple. The temple is an idea, is a concept, is the spirit of the nation. It's a spirit saying, let's have all nations united under the spirit of Israel, under the spirit of the God of Israel, under the spirit of God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in the place that God chose. So, what I'm doing now is part of that whole process. What I'm doing now, talking out to people and saying, connect to Jerusalem, study Torah from Jerusalem, understand that Jerusalem is the counterpart, is the center of our foundation, because it's the throne of God. That's part of building the temple.
You've also just recently announced that you're running for the president of the state of Israel. This is not like the president in other countries, but it's a very important position. What was the motivation behind that announcement?
Well, in Israel, as you said, the president is not a political figure. He expresses the solidarity. He expresses the spirit of the nation. He expresses the unity of the nation. And I think that one of the things that I have over other options is the connection that I have with the world, faithful, believing world. And I think that if we can see a president of the state of Israel understanding that Israel's concept is to be a light to the nations, and understanding the importance of the link between Israel and the believers of the Bible around the world, I think this would be an upgrading of the state of Israel. And therefore, it's not just a symbol. Many people say, oh, the president of Israel is a symbol. It's not a symbol. It's what unites the nation. It's what actually, when the nation is in such a divide, we need something to unite it. And when the unity will come through a spiritual aspect, will come through a biblical, faithful aspect, connecting all nations, I think we have a definitely a higher level of what the president of Israel can be, and I think there's a great influence of the believers around the world on the presidency here in Israel.
Yehudah, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I want to say, first of all, shalom to all of you from Jerusalem. And the fact that you are not here with us in Jerusalem, you are here with us. When I go up to prayer on Temple Mount, you are with me. When I go and talk about Jerusalem, it's not in my name, it's in your name. And therefore, I'm calling upon all of you. If you have a prayer group in your community, connect the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation and be part of the world movement of praying towards Jerusalem. We are here representing you, waiting for you. You're going to be coming. The coronavirus is going to be over one day. We're here for you when you're here physically and when you're not. Make your prayer groups directing, facing, concentrating on Jerusalem, the throne of God Almighty.
Thank you, Yehudah, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom, and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grunberg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Today, you will witness the fulfillment of biblical prophecy through the gathering of the exiles. God bless you from Jerusalem.
אני כל כך קשורה לישראל, שלא משנה איזה תחרות נוסעת קטנה, גדולה, כל פעם שאני רואה דגל ישראל זה עושה לי צמרמורת בגוף. אולימפיאדה זה חלום של כל ספורטאי, אני חושבת. איך שנכנסנו לאולימפיאדה, לכפר האולימפי, ראינו הספורטאים הכי טובים שיש, באמת, כאילו, מכל העולם, אמרנו, וואו, גם אנחנו ביניהם. אין לי מדינה אחרת. זה הבית שלי.
העלייה לישראל היא עוזרת להגשים לי את החלומות שלי, היא עוזרת לממש את השאיפות שלי ואת הפוטנציאל שלי כאומן. למרות שהמשפחה שלי היא משפחה יהודית, עד גיל 14 בערך לא היה לי שמץ של מושג מה זה להיות יהודי, חוץ מזה שזה לא הנושא שכדאי לדבר עליו בקרב החברים ובבית ספר ובמקומות ציבוריים בכלל. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שאני לא אהיה לבד. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שלמרות שאני עוזב את הבית והמשפחה שלי לא תהיה איתי, אבל יהיה מאחוריי גב.
If you've taken all the messages and all the education that we received, which come as no surprise of my desire to establish and live a life in Israel, I still see myself as an Oleh Hadash or new immigrant. My current role at Bank Leumi, which allows me to act as an ambassador both for the bank and for the State of Israel, makes me feel like I've come full circle. We have a people who, for the past 60 years, despite challenges, despite hardships, despite a war every decade, continue to succeed on an international scale. This is a land of modern-day heroes.
הגעתי מטרנסילבניה, ברומניה, הייתי בן 14. כאן ראיתי פעם ראשונה חיבור בראייתי מדהים בין השורשים שלנו, תורת ישראל, עם ישראל וארץ ישראל. כל אחד מכם כאן יכול להגיע, כי נותנים לו את ההזדמנות, הרבה בזכות קרן היסוד והתרומות שאנשים טובים נותנים, להתחנך, לגדול ולהיות יום אחד מן הימים רופא, פרופסור באוניברסיטה, רב, מדען או אלוף בצה"ל. בלעדיכם התורמים היה קשה למדינת ישראל להתמודד עם האתגר הזה ולהבטיח שאנחנו לאורך זמן נממש את החלום שלנו להקים מדינה בטוחה ובית לעם היהודי.
The Aliyah is the new blood that have to be constantly injected to make us better people. And in order to make us better people, we need Aliyah.
The majority of Israelis, in one way or the other, are either Olim themselves or descendants of Olim. And this is the power of the state. It's a major force.
Due to the coronavirus pandemic, we're expecting a massive wave of Aliyah from Jewish communities all around the world. Help us bring them home, and let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org. How many years, Bibi Peace? How many years have they been working, approximately?
I've been talking about it for 25 years, but, Mr. President, it's a fact that it was your involvement that accelerated everything. When I met Chairman Buhan in Uganda, in Africa, 8 months ago, I had hoped we could reach this day, but it took your diplomacy, your team, and frankly the courage of the leaders of Sudan and their wisdom, their willingness to join all of us in this historic odyssey. I mean, this isn't an odyssey. An odyssey is a long journey. This is like an express train that is moving from one peace treaty to the other, and I think one reinforces the other. And I'm very excited by a new future for Israel and Sudan, but I'm very excited also for a new future for Israel and other countries, which you and I know, Mr. President, are waiting to join us. So I think this is the beginning of something, or the continuation of something very, very profound and big. It's a change of history.
And Bibi, how does it feel flying those beautiful airliners right over the top of UAE? You never thought that was going to happen, right? To save about 2 hours in flight time.
Well, people are flying in the open. I mean, they're actually flying over what used to be, unthinkable.
Dangerous.
Expanses of land that were basically, in a belligerent state with us. Now they're flying to Dubai. Israelis are flying to Bahrain. Very soon we'd like to fly to Sudan. We'd like to have joint entrepreneurs, joint ventures, tourism, everything. And I think what was changing, Mr. President, under this vision of peace is that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It can be a win-win-win-win. I was going to say win-win, but there are so many wins here that we should continue. And that's really, I think, the remarkable change that you have brought forward in this area. I've been frankly believing it, but it would not happen for a long time. But it would not happen with such an active, I would say, positive and confident American position that just threw away the board and said, "We're starting anew. The old thing didn't work. This thing works. Let's move." And you did. Yeah. And we are all moving.
The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Bless Israel by supporting Keren HaYesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Rebecca Rand, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.